So with the big success of X-Men, Fox immediately went into making a sequel. Of course, Bryan Singer, alongside his two screenwriters that would later help him make Superman Returns, alongside David Hayter, still, thankfully, decided to base the next story off of one of the biggest stories of X-Men in general, God Loves, Man Kills. A very important story, kind of really showing the craziness of how some people will go to due to their hatred of mutants. Of course, it was Hayter at first, but then those two writers rewrote it into something bigger, mainly to take advantage of the much bigger budget that they were given to make a much crazier and bigger movie. The first movie was 1 hour and 40 minutes, and this movie is fucking 2 hours and 30 minutes. There, of course, were a few ideas. Sabretooth was supposed to be in this movie, what was cut later on. They were going to do a little bit more with Beast, who has a very slight cameo in this as his human form. And there was supposed to be Angel being turned into Archangel, but that would have been a little bit too complicated. There in fact was supposed to be an even bigger budget than this movie got. It was supposed to even have the Sentinels in the Danger Room in it, but they unfortunately had to cut that as well due to the budget being cut a little bit due to the fact that Halle Berry had recently become a much bigger star, so they had to kind of shove her in a bit more of the movie than previous. Bryan Singer hired Guy Hendricks Dias to help produce the big, crazy sets you'll see in this movie, especially later on when we get into the main villain's big old tube-filled dam that he works in for some reason. And with help of Cinest Studios, they were able to really up the looks of the visual effects. This movie looks a lot nicer and cleaner than the previous one. I still feel like X-Men's effects were still pretty good. It's just that they weren't as clean as they could have been, you know. There's certain things felt a little bit strange looking. Again, Wolverine's claws didn't look all that great. They look a lot cooler and a lot sharper now. Especially because some of them are clearly real things that he's wearing. And of course that awesome particle effect that shows up when Nightcrawler bamfs from here to there. Which of course is the right word of saying it, that is officially and copyrightedly the exact sound effect that it is. It goes bimf, bimf. That's how you say it. Bryan Singer, apparently because of Road to Perdition, had a little bit of a different way than the previous one. The first one felt a little bit too wacky and wild, and this one feels a little bit more grounded, a little bit more realistic and darker, especially, at least in terms of lighting. This movie definitely tries to be more about the characters and its emotions, and the way it's shot definitely represents that much more grounded approach to shoot these characters and focus more on the emotion of the characters rather than the crazy action. William Stryker in the comics is in fact not some kind of big war general that is the entire reason why Wolverine is the way he is. He's in fact a crazy televangelist preacher that really doesn't like mutants. But again, in this movie, he's some kind of weird sergeant guy who was previously part of Weapon X, the reason why Wolverine is the way he is, and he is part of this new program. Weirdly, it's fucking Hydra. It's kind of shown in the movie, but it's not exactly said. But it is Hydra, like Captain America Hydra, but before it was that. They mixed Stryker's story with the Return to Weapon X storyline from the comics to make him more involved with Wolverine, and now he seemingly has some kind of plan. As shown in actually the tie-in comics of X2, of which are canon. The tie-in comics to X-Men 1 are not canon. They weren't even canon when X-Men 1 first released, because they actually, contradicted stuff Shonen said in the movie itself, which is stupid. But the X2 comics are where he seemingly tried to kidnap Wolverine and Sabretooth once again, later going on to kidnap the character who is in this movie, Lady Deathstrike. They kind of just neuter her character, really, and by that I mean not physically, I mean they kind of just get rid of all what makes her character in the comics interesting. Like, she's one of the coolest characters that are related to Wolverine. But yeah, I'm not going to say anything about what makes her cool, because it's not in this movie. Look her up and read an actual Lady Deathstrike comic, please. She's really cool, and she's really angry, often, for reasons that at this point she should probably just let go, because it's been a few years. But of course he also kidnaps Kurt Wagner, or Kurt Wagner from his traveling circus and ultimately kind of brainwashes him. He's got this kind of thing where he drips some weird acid thing. It's like a brain fluid that comes from his crazy mutant son, who in the comics William Stryker just cold-blooded murdered when he was a kid. But in the X-Men movie universe, he uses his mutant kid to like control their mutants. He's kind of pissed at Charles Xavier, and he's been trying to find him for at least a while. And now the fact that Magneto is trapped in jail, he's able to use this weird goop to control Nightcrawler to kind of freak out the president and allow him to do the same weird mind control-y thing to Magneto. The news of Nightcrawler's attack on the president has Professor X visit Magneto to see if Magneto had anything involved in it, and of course Stryker knocks Professor X and Cyclops, who was with him, out to further his true plan. His plan mainly is to try and get Professor X to be controlled and just kill all the mutants through his own version of Cerebro, alongside getting the ability to raid the X-Mansion, take away all of the children mutants, I guess, to just have as a test to make sure that all the mutants died, and to also get any tech that he might need from the actual Cerebro to make his own Cerebro to help that whole thing happen. Of course, what he didn't expect to happen is the fact that his previous thing that he helped create, Wolverine, is back from exploring the snow, and that he was left home. Him, alongside a kind of help of Colossus, who's in like only the beginning part of this movie, they're able to get a whole bunch of the kids out, but him, Iceman, Rogue, who have now started their own relationship, and Pyro are able to escape, and they go off to where Jean Grey and Storm went to try and find Nightcrawler. While Wolverine and gang find Bobby Drake's parents and kind of like a weird mutant coming out, which kind of furthers the undertones of this movie. Fucking Bobby's douchebag of a brother calls the fucking police on them and nearly gets them killed before, thankfully, Storm and Jean alongside Nightcrawler are able to get to them. They're nearly shot down by some fucking jets that I believe were working for Stryker. I'm kind of unclear on that. They're nearly shot down, but thankfully are found by Magneto, who was broken up awesomely by Mystique after she just injected some fucking metal into some dude. Like, that guy should have been dead. I mean, he is dead later after Magneto just rips the fucking metal from him, but like, dude. Now that all of them are united, they kind of figure out Stryker's plan, and they try and infiltrate them. Obviously, they send Mystique to do her whole Mystique thing, and slowly get them in. They kind of fight through all the different groups. Wolverine has to fight Lady Deathstrike in an alright fight, which ultimately leads him to catching up with Stryker. He leaves Stryker as he figures out that he does have to help the rest of them, as Stryker's big base that's in a dam is now bursting. Magneto stops Stryker's son from making Xavier kill all the mutants, but he starts making him kill all the humans, because even though he's helping the mutants, he's still Magneto, so he has to do something bad. Thankfully, Storm is able, with help of Nightcrawler, to get into the fake Cerebro room and stop that from happening. And they just kind of leave Stryker and Stryker's son there, as all the X-Men go off on their own, and Magneto and Mystique take Pyro to go off wherever they're gonna go. Because all this kind of freaked out the public a little bit, like the whole movie. The president is about to call this big state of emergency against mutants, a thing that won't happen until it's a little bit in the timeline. Mainly thanks to the fact that, due to the X-Men finding about Stryker and finding his files, they're able to be like, here you go, mutants aren't bad. Well, at least not all of them. Thankfully, a crisis is averted, but unfortunately the only way they were able to get out is the unfortunate death of Jean Grey, who had to sacrifice herself to just like stop the whole water from the dam coming out and making the whole fucking plane go up. This is of course setting us up for the later return of her in the adaptation of a Phoenix saga that will hopefully happen in a sequel, which we now know to later be X-Men 3, but we'll get to that, because X-Men 2 is pretty good. Well, I say pretty good, meaning it's really fucking good. The fact that we already know who these characters are thanks to the introduction of the first one really helps go into the fact that we are able to spend time with them all separately. This is really great how they separate the characters and really do different things with them. We get Jean and Storm's story with Nightcrawler really expanding who they are as characters separately, while we get Wolverine and his group's characters alongside what Xavier's doing, and Mystique and Magneto. Like, they're all different groups all different parts of the same movie, and different groups all doing their own arcs, all of which continue the full arcs of these characters throughout the series. And it's all really cool because it takes what was interesting in the first one and continues forward, making a overall story of them still dealing with the world around them, trying to escape Stryker and his whole deal, but also furthering their arcs and setting up stuff for possible future movies. It's not like every single arc is fulfilled in this movie. They do continue the relationship with Bobby Drake and Rogue, and there's no real ending to that. But it feels more like cool character development to help us learn about the characters, to really help us know why we should care about them, and why we should want them to survive the main full story. And of course, them being together at the end of the movie is enough, at least for now, to satiate the fact that we are not done with their relationship, but done enough to be satisfied with the movie. This movie is full of that. It's a really good middle part to an unfortunate, horrible ending to a trilogy, but regardless, it's a really great movie. This movie really plays to its strengths of how many interesting characters and dynamics that it can deal with. My main problem with it, though, is there probably should have been one more movie in between this. It should have been movie 3. We should definitely had Wolverine come back into a different adventure, and them being a team with Nightcrawler and maybe even Angel, and them dealing with whatever will happen next in what should have been a third one. The fact that they get raided and everything gets like jostled around is a real big like change in the what would probably be the norm of an X-Men. This feels like one of those big event stories that would have been in the comics, you know? And I really feel like there should have been a little bit more of these characters of them hanging around learning about each other to move on into this third one. And there, of course, should have been a little adventure after this. I mean, there kind of was, and I'll talk about that next time. But I feel like we definitely should have had at least a little bit more time to really let the Jean Grey death mean more. We kind of just met her last movie, and we care about this character, but not enough to be like, no! You know, it doesn't feel that way, like, at the end of this movie. It's like, that sucks, you know? I'm not happy about it. I'm not sad about it, then, you know? So not as much as Cyclops, who, by the way, was barely in this movie because he was knocked out and mind-controlled through most of it. Jean and Cyclops are once again not the best characters, and neither really is Storm. Halle Berry is a little bit better in this one than previous, but she still is not on top of her game. She'll grow a little bit better as an actress throughout her time, and she's actually a little bit better. And she's actually quite good in the next one, unfortunately, but she's kind of in the middle here. Again, though, the strengths are the main three characters: Hugh Jackman, Patrick Stewart, and Ian McKellen, all fantastic actors who do incredibly well and really fill out these characters. They feel like the characters from the comic, so. But of course, Anna Paquin and Shawn Ashmore as Rogue and Bobby Drake respectively are still really good in this. I'm really glad we do get more time with them. I really wanted to see more of their relationship. Again, I would love to see more of them before we kind of just have an ending to it in the next one. For the most part, I really like how their arc continues from that in onto this very nicely. And we even get more time with Pyro, who's a very different actor than the previous movie, who really grows into something more as this movie goes on. One of the few acolytes that learn that they think that Magneto is the right one, and that's an interesting idea of which side are you going to join. It's similar to what Colossus actually does in the comics at one point, where he joins Magneto to do events that were happening at the time. It's a cool defection that, again, I really think could have had more merit to it if we had more time with that guy. If there was a second one before this one, it would have been cool to grow to learn that guy, him and Bobby's relationship, and their cool friendship, and possibly strained friendship due to a Rogue being there. You know, that would have been cool to see, and then him defect in this one. It would have meant more. Of course, Alan Cumming is really great as Nightcrawler. It's Alan Cumming. Can't really say anything bad about Alan Cumming, especially because he's Nightcrawler, who's my favorite fucking X-Men. Majorly, you got Brian Cox as the mentioned Stryker. He's not the same kind of character he was in the comics, but he is a very intimidating figure who really has this cool, weird plan that makes a lot of sense as the movie goes on. It's not a perfect plan, but that's the reason it fails. You know, I really feel like people don't... it's fine to point out flaws in a plan, obviously, but the fact that there is flaws in a plan is the reason why it fails and why a hero is able to get past it, you know? And this is one of those well-done, flawed plans, you know? It's not like it has a big flaw that the hero could have easily had done. It's one of those plans that's not perfect because he didn't count on every single thing going on there. And that's the reason he ultimately fails, plus his own hubris that he definitely has throughout the film, him really being into the idea of just killing mutants. But that really brings him into this well-rounded, interesting character that feels more than just like a one-note villain, like how certain other villains are later in the series. He's more than just kill mutants. He seemingly has more of a point to him. There's seemingly more of a darker side to him that could be interesting to explore, that unfortunately we never ever do. So, thanks. But that's X2's major flaw. Regardless of the stupid stuff I'm about to say in the next 5 fucking seconds, this movie is a really great story with a lot of very interesting characters that throughout it we grow to like even more than we did going off of the previous one. It's a good story, but it's so good that it makes you want to see more. These characters are so well-rounded that you want to see more of them. You get enough of a taste of them to begin to like them even more, and we never get any more of it. Regardless of the quality of later movies, of which obviously some of them are really good and some of them are awful, we never get any real continuation of the arcs really continued in this. You know, it's just... I'll get more into that in X3 and later movies, but X2 is really like the height of what I feel this series got into in terms of what X-Men is. A team of characters that really have this camaraderie, and they go on this very interesting adventure that's more than just fighting the villain. It's dealing with who they are, their uncertainties in life. There is several parts of this. There's a direct mention of a Camelot story that's more a version of... that's a flawed version of the characters being very uncertain about their adventures. That's a very simplified version of that story, but it's pertinent in the fact that it's very much about you are your own person, and your destiny is not created by the universe, it's by you, and that makes a person very unclear and not sure where their life's gonna go. And in a world that doesn't accept you for whatever it might be, that's the perfect kind of story arc that you could have in an X-Men movie. And that's exactly what X-Men is. It's about learning who you are as a person and your place in the world, which is whatever the fuck you make of it. That's what is my favorite part about X-Men. They have these cool powers and all that, but it's less about that they are cool superheroes and that they are people just like us and they just want to do that. They want to live normal lives. People who also want to live those same normal lives and teach those to make sure that they don't go crazy and want to start a war against the humans, you know? That's the X-Men to me, and this movie really is X-Men to me. And regardless of how I feel about later movies, this is the most X-Men of all of the X-Men movies. I like in it, just going, damn, I wish they went more into that, into the Rogue and Bobby stuff, instead of just dropping it later, you know? And I'll get more into that, but this was a really great story that its only real problem is the fact that it sets up stuff that's never really continued on. But you know what? The best part about this movie is the fact that it is its own self-contained story that even if you wish that they did continue, you could probably just stop right here and go, they don't need to. That's it. It's X-Men. Great job. Nightcrawler doesn't leave for whatever reason. Of course, actual flaws of the movie that aren't just me being dumb are its fight scenes are a little bit weirdly edited. It actually doesn't have a lot of fight scenes. It's mainly just kind of the X-Men marking some guys, the Hydra soldiers. Besides that, there is the Wolverine fight against Lady Deathstrike that I really liked as a kid, but I kind of just don't like now. It's weirdly edited, and it's just not a very fun fight, honestly. And it's parallel to the incredibly quick Jean Grey and Cyclops fight. I really liked this part as a kid. And I guess it's just that I didn't like the talking and the characterization. You know, when you're a kid, you want the like big action scenes. That's the reason they put these in these films. But you really need more movies like this that try and focus more on the stories and the characters and how they're feeling throughout these situations, rather than big epic action scenes that are full of guys flipping around all over the place and weird, quick, fast-paced editing that I'm sure I liked as a kid, but I just cannot stand now because it's so hard to watch. They got like these weird angles. I like the angles throughout the movie because they really help add to the scenes and add to the very subtle emotion of a lot of these scenes. It's more about who these characters are as people, and the way Bryan Singer directs this really helps with that. But again, when it comes to the action scenes, he's really not fantastic with them. There's a lot of strange angles they have that they aim at, like at the characters as they're flipping around, and they cut to these multiple angles where it's just like, can I sit back and relax and like see what they're doing, please? I just kind of don't like that very quick, fast editing where it just feels weird, and I'm actually kind of glad there's not as many fight scenes in this movie because they're actively worse than the previous one. Like, I really don't like the way that scene was edited. It just wasn't really interesting. I was kind of happy that when it ended. Weirdly, though, I do feel more sorry for Lady Deathstrike in this. She very clearly doesn't want to be there, as in the character, you know? Because it's just like when you're a kid, you just kind of go, yeah, she's the bad guy. Sure. And it was still pretty fucked up how she just got, like, injected with metal. But then, like, you see her actively trying to, like, struggle away from Stryker, and Stryker, like, puts the goop on her fucking neck again. So she's very clearly not working with him, you know? She's being mind-controlled. So that poor woman died for no reason. That is incredibly unfortunate, and you kind of feel bad for her. But again, besides the fact that I feel like they kind of jumped the gun in terms of having this story as the second ever movie, and that we definitely could have used more time with some of the characters to really stick the landing with the story points, and the fact that said story points don't lead to anywhere in future movies. This movie is still a very entertaining, self-contained storyline with some great actors, some really interesting characters. And if its action scenes are not great, they certainly aren't bad, and while certain characters don't have that big of time on screen, we still get quite a bit of other characters and a lot of development that really helps expand the X-Men as a group and really brings them into what they should be as a group. This is a true X-Men movie. The first one was just the introduction. This was the true bringing them into what X-Men should be, even if not perfectly. You know, we still got the leather suits and all of that, and the very dark, gritty, matrixy 2000s era feel to it, but regardless, this movie is still really, really good movie. With the fact that it doesn't go too deep into its characters, especially certain ones like Cyclops, and again, its action scenes are not great. Due to its imperfectness it's still really good story. I can't give it a well done, even though I would love to. I'm going to give it a medium well, but I definitely see if you have more time with certain things, you could definitely have a really great story. This has the showings of God Loves Man Kills from the comics. You can sense that in this, and that being a fantastic story and pulling parts of that was a really great idea because it made for another really good story. It was a much better case in terms of mixing storylines together. Several comic book movies bring in stories from the comics and they're just doing whatever they want. And they either have a version of that story or they just have a full recreation of that story. And either of them can just completely miss the whole point. And when they mix together multiple stories, that's when they really miss the point. I could do a whole other review of like Batman vs. Superman, but this X2 is a much better version of how you can mix multiple stories together and mainly by grabbing what is really good about those two and seeing how they could possibly work together the best way instead of just taking Dark Knight Returns, Superman dies, smashing them together while still Wonder Woman's there. You know, you really gotta try and craft your own story using the stuff from the comics, and that's how you make a really good movie instead of having either something very stale and a lesser version of something that we already like, or missing the whole point of what makes these characters their own characters. Again, this is X-Men as X-Men, and I would have loved to have seen more of this. And we get a little bit more of this in 2 movies from now, in the much better First Class, but there is 2 other movies in between, the 2 probable worst of the X-Men movies, which, oh boy, can't wait to get to those, because next time I'll be talking about X-Men The Last Stand. Oh boy, I've not watched this movie for a long time, and there's a good reason. I am not ready for this shit, but that'll be next time. Till then, I've been the Movie Thunder. I hope you enjoyed this review. I talk about different X-Men stuff and all different kinds of movie reviews all over my channel, so if you want to do that kind of thing, go ahead and subscribe. Again, I'll be doing Last Stand next week, so you don't want to miss that fucking rant. Did you like X2, and do you agree that it's basically the best of the not Logan X-Men movies? Then leave that stuff in the comments. I'd love to talk about it. But most importantly, stay good, stay safe, don't be an asshole.